This episode of the segment, we are live at Black Hat 2025. And today, super excited to be joined by Bennett Moe, VP of Strategic Partnerships at CyberWire. And very interestingly, a cartographer.
Yes, traditionally so, yeah.
Right. So I think with sort of visibility or lack of visibility being a significant challenge for security organizations worldwide, tell us what security business can learn from cartography.
Yeah, I think about this a fair bit because I spent a lot of time in geointelligence, autonomous navigation, traditional mapping technologies and things. And when you think about maps and cartography, they're by their very nature an abstraction of reality. And so you have to take a lot of data and pick out the things that are important for the information that you're trying to convey and the users that are using it and what they're trying to do with it. And you're doing a lot of the same kinds of things in security. You're ingesting a lot of data. You have to prioritize that data and put it in a form that is manageable and consumable by people who need to make decisions in high pressure environments and do that very quickly. So there's really interesting parallels with how to manage data. And that's something that I learned along the way with cartography is that the difference between the data and the decision making that you need to make from that data and how to translate those things into actionable insights.
Absolutely. And I think the other really interesting thing about cartography, which is absolutely applicable in the cyberspace, is that when we think about maps, it's not just a single map we're thinking about. That you've got, let's say, your geophysical map, your political map, your climate map, etc. And that same approach to mapping applies to the cyberspace because you've probably got a map that represents your network relationships, your identity relationships, and so on, right?
Absolutely, yeah. You're looking at many layers of data, and each of those layers add to the one below it and above it. And distilling those things and picking out the ones that are most critical for how you're making decisions and how that fit into your operational structure and the things that you're trying to accomplish is critical to the mission.
Absolutely, right. And being able to sort of understand those maps and navigate them, and I guess navigate between layers, because that's ultimately when we look at sort of how an attack develops, an attacker is navigating between layers in the map that they have in their head to get to their trophy.
Right. Yes, exactly. And understanding how they're thinking about that data and how they're translating those maps and how they're looking at navigating around is important.
Absolutely. So we're at Black Hat this year, and I'm sure you've been to many, many Black Hats over the years. So how have you seen things evolve at each visit here, and what are you excited about this year?
I'm always excited to see what new companies are coming in because the faces change, the brands change when you're coming into a show like this. So I like to explore the startup city and seeing what new entries are there. What are the new technologies? What's the buzz? And even going from one show to the next, what are the things that are buzzing around there? You know, AI is one of the hot topics. I don't see that changing in the near term, and how we deal with AI and seeing how people are moving generative and agentic AI into really actionable applications and getting past the buzz of the AI and seeing what they're really doing with it, I think is really fascinating.
So let's talk about that for a bit. So you're obviously, you work for one of the sort of reputable brands in sort of the media in our industry. How do you feel that vendors are talking about their use of AI? Do you feel that there is enough depth for them explaining how they're leveraging AI to improve their products, or do you think it's still very surface level?
I think we're getting there. There's still a lot of marketing speak out there around AI. I'm seeing just in the last few months, or between the last Black Hat and this Black Hat, that the way they're talking about AI and how they're looking at the applications and showing people how it's making a difference for their operations is they're getting much more into the actionable insights that they can leverage and how they can improve their operations with AI, rather than talking about the big picture of what it can be, and even talking about AI when they're really talking about machine learning and applications. Yeah. So they're refining the message, but really getting to really some actionable applications of AI, and that's exciting.
I mean, that's exciting. So you don't need to name the vendor unless it's Illumio, in which case feel free to. What is the most exciting use of AI that you have come across in cyber?
In my use, I see things like how folks are distilling information and using that to process larger volumes of data. So things that would usually take humans much longer amounts of time, being able to speed to resolution or speed to decision making is I find that those applications very, very interesting. Still exploring some of the agentic things that folks are using. So those are some of the things that I want to explore while we're here.
So do you think, last question on the AI topic, do you think that we are solving new problems using AI when it comes to cyber, or is AI very much at the moment giving us much better ways of solving problems that we've had now for many years?
Well, a little bit of both. I think with AI, it's moving so fast that we're creating new applications and solving existing problems with AI. We're also seeing new problems that are coming about because of the development of the AI and solving those problems. But we need to move fast because we don't really know where AI is headed. So as AI develops in the larger ecosystem of AI, how do we respond to that from a security standpoint? Because definitely our adversaries are. You know, they're looking at how they can leverage AI for their uses, and we need to use that to stay a step ahead rather than be reactive. And to a certain extent, we can't help but be reactive because we can't foresee all the use cases. But we're going to have to move fast to keep up with how it's being developed.
So many sort of commentators, industry professionals, etc., like to say that we can only defeat the AI-powered attacker by making the defender have their own AI superpowers. Where do you stand on that?
You got to start with the fundamentals. I think that's true to a certain extent. But how we use AI is based on how we use the people around the AI. I think that a lot of what we need to do is make sure that we have the right people doing the right jobs in the right roles. And that comes down to how we hire people, how we train people, how we identify the gaps in our own workforces. Because we can give them the tools, but if we don't have the right people in the right places to leverage those tools, we can power them with AI, but they're not going to be able to fulfill the mission if we don't have the right people in the right seats doing the right jobs.
Absolutely. And you mentioned sort of doing the fundamentals, right? And you very much focus on essentially the people's processes. But I think the same thing applies to doing the security fundamentals, security basics, security hygiene, whatever the preferred term is, doing those exceptionally well. And I think that's even more important now as AI use proliferates, because that's the kind of gaps, the gaps in controls, the gaps in, like, whether it's a misconfiguration, whether it's a vulnerability, AI-powered attackers are going to be able to exploit them significantly more quickly and a massive scale compared to before.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we're not building our security platforms or our security plans, our models from the basics that are already established, we know how to build a security program. Those things don't change. Like in the theory of building a security program, we want to layer on the things that will enable us to defend ourselves against these new threats and identify them.
Fantastic. So let's again, your role, and you're working in a well-respected sort of cyber industry media organization. When you look at how the nature of how we report on cyber has changed over the years, like what have you seen as the evolution of, I'm going to call it cyber journalism? I don't know if that's a term, but I'm going to use it.
Sure, I'll go with that. One of the things that we do, we specialize in distilling knowledge for professionals who need to make decisions every day. Journalism has become easier because the publishing platforms have become more ubiquitous. So there are more sources of information for people to consume. The challenge is making sure that you're getting trusted sources of information. And there are some things coming online. There is more AI use in journalism. We don't use AI in our journalism. We're all human curated content. So we want to maintain that trust that we've built with our audience. And I think that is important to this community. Trust is a big thing with the cybersecurity community. If we want to make sure that they're getting the right information. I think there's a use case for AI in journalism as well, as long as there's a curation around that to make sure that the information is correct, that it's properly notated, that it's authenticated, and we're giving people the right information, and more importantly, the information that they really need to know. Like we want to. There's so much information out there. No one person can consume it all, and we want to give people the things that are really important for them, that they can act on, that are going to make them and give them the power to make better decisions about their job on a day-to-day basis to protect their companies, their communities, and the world at large.
And do you see, because of course the general public now and the general news media is definitely far more aware of cyber threats, and we see more and more cyber attacks be reported in the mainstream news. With that, is that changing the way that you approach the content that you create for the professionals that you are serving?
Not in a large sense. We've developed a way of distilling the information that we report and how we want to report and the things that we want to report. We've adapted to the things that people want to hear. So our audience in particular wants to be educated about what's going on and get the information that they need to know on a daily basis. So we were focusing on that. Not very often do we have to go back and reference like a mainstream media if they've said something incorrect. It happens every once in a while. But the reporting overall has gotten better. There's been a lot of turnover in media organizations. A lot of media organizations are getting smaller, and they're cutting out their newsrooms. And in many cases, they're cutting the cyber reporting in their newsrooms. So it's more important than ever that we're providing that service.
So, like in terms of the particular audience that you serve, and particularly like security leadership, CSOs, CISOs, what are the key pain points that they constantly keep going back to, that they need to be better informed about?
Getting information to them in a way that they consume it, that is tangible for their business. So putting it in terms of things, how do they think about protecting their business, and how does cyber policy and cybersecurity impact their bottom line? Like they're thinking about the whole of the business. And especially in the CEO, CTO level, they're thinking about not just cybersecurity, but that's a piece of what they have to consider. And how does that fit into the larger organization, and potentially looking at the risks and impacts of an incident, and the power of if in the case of a public company, making sure that they are compliant and be able to reporting the right things, being able to report their shareholders that they have all the things in place that they need to protect their companies. That's not going to affect their bottom line and their stock price.
Yeah. And in fact, we were just discussing with one of our sales leaders earlier today exactly about that, about how can we sort of help our customers, leaders, be able to connect more between security challenges and the business challenges. And that seems to be just a continuous theme. I know we're almost at time, right? So before we wrap, tell us what, as you leave Black Hat, take your flight back home, what would you, if you got this one thing out of it that would make you really excited, what would it be?
To see some new application or technology that I haven't yet seen, and something that is going to make a big impact. It's going to make me say, "Wow, okay, they got it." That they're going to see something new, and generally the level of discussion around the new technologies that are coming online, and seeing how that's evolving, and seeing the advancement in people like being much more application focused on how they talk about like the impacts of what they're doing.
Well, fantastic. Hopefully, as you take that flight home, the memory in your mind is Illumio Insight, so that'll be amazing.
Absolutely.
Well, Bennett, it's amazing to be able to interview someone who's so storied in sort of cyber journalism, cyber media. So thank you so much for your time here.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.